Okay, let's see. We are now recording. So let me go through that again really quickly. And then again, if you have uncertainty, if you have questions or anything, let me know. All right. I will use next Thursday as an example. All right. Before we leave here today, we will know which of you want to do a presentation for next week and what you want to present on. And I will make a note of that. And you know, we'll go from there. I'm going to set up a little note right now because I'm nothing if not efficient when I want to be. All right. Now, there are 5 pieces. If you present, and no more than 2 people can present on any one reading, if you present, you don't have to do the longer written assignment for that module. You are required to do that twice in the term. So that means for 2 terms, you won't present, and you will have to write the longer written summary in which you use, say, any 2 pieces at least. And you can use more if you want. You can also use, if you want, additional outside sources, but you have to use at least 2 of the assigned readings in some sort of an analytical essay where you sort of, I don't just want summaries. We've all looked at these things. We all, we've discussed them in class. We can all summarize them. What you're trying to do is give me an idea that you understand them well enough to be able to tell me, this is what we learned from this. That will become clearer when you, a little bit clearer, I hope, when you look at the assignment prompts. I try to give you a more specific idea of, in this prompt, try to do this. Try to answer this question, okay? So if you're presenting, you don't have to do that analytical summary assignment. What everyone does have to do, irrespective of whether or not you're presenting in class, is use the journaling function that's found for every module. Let's see. Yeah, it says module 1 reading notes, journal for module 1 notes. I mean, I'm screaming it as loud as I can, right? So you click on that, it opens up a box, and you just go through the articles as you're reading it. Maybe take 1 or 2 at a time. You can go back to this as often as you want and go through and skim the article, make some superficial notes, and then maybe leave it. Go skim another one, make some superficial notes. Then go back to the first one, read it a little more carefully, and fill in those earlier notes. You can do it with whatever way you want. What you're trying to do is 2 things. One, from those notes, you will have a lot of the material you're going to need for the longer written assignment if you're required to do it, that module, right? You will already have done a lot of your work, but you'll have done it in a kind of incremental way so that you're not hit with one single assignment that you just go brain dead on, okay? There's that. Also, as we're discussing these things in class, because you've already looked at them and you've got notes, right? You can contribute something useful to the discussion, and or you make notes of the things that appear in those articles that don't make sense to you, so that you'll know what questions to ask, so that either I or your colleagues can help you understand those things. All right. Everybody hits something that just they bounce off of. Now, we're not talking about the marginal fringy things. But if there's something in the core of an article where you look at that and think, I don't know what this is, put it in your notes. Because the other thing is, I'm going to be going through those notes because no one else but you and me can see those. I'll be going through there. And if I see them, especially if you've like bold-faced them or italicized them or somehow made them jump out so I can really see them, I'm making notes from those so I know what to emphasize in class discussions, or I know how to guide because if I see 3 or 4 people, gee, there's some uncertainty about what the Spanish-American War was or why, the telegraph was so important to that, I'll make sure that we emphasize that, okay? So this note-taking satisfies a lot of things. You're all required to do that for every reading in every module, which sounds like a lot more work than it really is. If you think about it, it's what you're required to do in every single class that has assigned reading. What you're doing is you're just showing me your work. You're showing me what notes you took and that you in fact engaged with the readings or made some attempt at that. All right. So again, in-class presentation, no assignment. Okay. Then your assignment will be derived from the quality of your presentation and general sort of attendance participation. I'll keep notes for individuals who present on those days. And the quality of your notes. That will be where that module's grade comes from for you, not from the written assignment, okay? On the modules where you're not presenting, you're under a little less pressure to be really prepared to engage in class because the idea is, I'll do my work after the fact when I've had a chance to do. I don't really understand these readings as well. Let me hear them discussed in class. Then I'll know more clearly what I want to write about for my assignment. And so you only do 2 of those, 2 written assignments, 2 presentations, and everybody does a complete set of notes. Okay? Is that clear? If not, I understand it might sound, it's actually easier to do than it is to explain. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up from Sarah. Okay.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
The notes, are they going to be due before class time? Do we need to read all the readings before?
No, I would prefer that, we're going to take the readings pretty much in order. So what I'd like you to do is say, for next week, we're going to have to do all of them because we don't really have 2 days, and it's not fair to present on readings this week because no one's had a chance to read yet. I mean, some of you enrolled late, and I just don't want to disadvantage anyone, all right? We'll have enough time to go through 5 readings on Thursday. Because remember, the presentations themselves, 2 or 3 minutes, you should be able to, get at the core of something. If 2 of you are doing it, it's that much easier, okay? What I don't want is a long, rambling disquisition on some of the stuff that's in the article. That doesn't help us at all. We all theoretically have looked at, if not completely read the article. So you're not helping us there. You're trying to help us understand, here's what's most important, okay? Do I expect all of those notes to be done before class? No, that's hard to do. But what I would like is before you do your written work, I should be able to look at your notes and probably even have a pretty good idea of what you're going to write about, okay? So I would say use that as a deadline, because what I'm going to do is, once the deadline is here, it'll almost always be a Sunday to give you the rest of the week, and in case you've had a tough week. Once that's due, then I'm going to shut those notes off so you can't add any more. And then I can go back, look at them, and evaluate them as part of your grade for that module. Okay? Yeah, in other words, I'll probably never grade you down if your notes aren't that great, but I might enhance you. Say you did an okay paper, but your notes were really thorough and you really put a lot of work in. I'm probably going to kick your grade up a little bit in the paper, because what I'm grading you for is the module, okay, not the paper itself. Does that make sense? I don't like to talk much about grades, but I understand that's the only currency that means anything, at this level is, this is the thing you're paying for is, to get a grade so that you can go on and have a life and all that. I get that. All right. Any other questions now on what I'm asking you to do?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Where can we turn in the written assignments? I don't see that on Moodle. Is there a special
No, you don't,
spot?
because I'm not going to make it visible until we're ready to do the assignment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Because the reason, Monica, I'm not trying to be cryptic. It's just that I don't want people looking at the prompt and just kind of writing to the prompt yet. I want us just to think about the readings. But sometimes too, we might have an interruption. Something might come along. There might be some interruption in the schedule. I mean, people might try to occupy the Capitol again, and I might say, you know what? I need to watch 12 hours of news. Let's not have class. I probably won't, but I didn't plan on spending all of yesterday looking at the news, but I did. And because I get paid to. So, I'm just saying, I'll make it available. I mean, I can pretty much tell you that at the end of module 2, at the end of next week, that following Sunday after next week will probably very likely be when the assignment will be due. But for example, Monica and everyone else, suppose we don't get through all 5 readings. Oh, what a horrible thing. You know what that means? We'll have to do them again the following week, which means I will extend the deadline for the assignment. I'm not going to ask you to write about assignments if we haven't had a chance to discuss the readings in class. That's not fair. Does that answer your question, Monica? Yeah, again, I'm not trying to be cryptic. I'm just, I don't want to be distracting by putting a bunch of links up there before we're ready to deal with them. Okay? Anything else before we move on? I'm not going to keep you too long today, but I want to just kind of do a little bit of a flyover of what the class is about and what we're going to be doing. But the tricky part is figuring exactly what I'm talking about with these assignments. For some people, is like, oh, I didn't understand that, I had to do 2 in-class presentations. Yeah, so I'm telling you, yeah, you got to do 2. The good news, you don't have to do 4. Okay? Yeah, you have to do written assignments. How many? 2. Oh, okay, I can handle that. Yeah, you can. You know what? 2 written assignments, that's 4 pages. That's 4 to 6 pages in an upper division class in a university. Can I get a witness? Come on, that's fair, all right? So what does that mean? They better be kick-ass 4 pages. I expect your best work. If you turn in shit work, I'm going to give you a shit grade in social science terms. Okay, that is now officially recorded. That is official policy of the class. If you blow the assignment off, I'll blow off the grade. And I will sleep fine. Okay, because it's up to you to apply yourselves. I will be as aggressive with you as I can in terms of, you can bang me over the head as many times as you want about clarifying the readings or answering questions or whatever. If you're putting the work in, I'm happy to do it. All right. Another thing that I would suggest that some of you might want to do, if you look at the Moodle page, you'll see a writing sample there. Now, I used this same writing sample. Some of you know this from last night. The senior seminar, which is the final kind of written research, I also include this writing sample. The reason why I put it there is it reminds you of kind of here's how I construct an academic paragraph. You start out with a very clear kind of thesis sentence. You're letting the reader know this paragraph's about this. And then the next paragraph will begin with a sentence that transitions from that idea to this one, connecting the ideas together. Okay, so I'm trying to give you an idea of what that should look like. All right, what I'm trying to encourage you to remember is these are not essays that are just written in like common vernacular and slang and things like that. This is serious scholarly work. It's concise and it's lean and it's to the point and it's scholarly. So treat it professionally. Give me your best writing. What I can guarantee you that a lot of you are going to want to do is send me, before you upload your final draft, either send me a rough draft or at least send me an outline of what you're thinking of writing, okay? Because this is where students stand or fall in a class like this. The ones who understand what written work should look and sound like, and the ones who don't. And the ones who don't are often the same ones who don't read. One of the most common things I've found, I've actually done some research on this, the students who are the least effective as writers are the ones who read the least, overwhelmingly, because the one feeds the other. The more you read, the more you understand what the structure of an essay should be and what it should sound like, what the proper voice on the page should be. And the more that you encounter grammar and syntax in reading, the more organically it feels when you write it. So you don't make those silly mistakes like, run-on sentences and comma splices and, sort of breaking syntax and grammar all to pieces. You don't do that if you've read a lot. Very few people who read a lot can't write. Not everybody's a great writer, but this doesn't require great writing. It requires clear writing, okay? In the same way that if you're speaking in class, you should speak clearly. And I don't just mean phonetically. In other words, think about what you're going to say before you say it. If you feel an idea coming on, maybe write it down so that you have something to which you can refer. Because sometimes we flame out a little bit. We're in a group and we think we have an idea formed in our head and we start to talk and we just hit the wall. I used to do a lot of research on talk radio. And one of the things I found was that, especially first-time callers, if they hadn't written down what they wanted to say, they would just stumble. Yeah, they wouldn't know what they were going to do. I understand that. So, sometimes if you have a question, write the question down. Another thing we know about the way our brains work, if you want to remember something, write it down. If you want to really remember it, write it down more than once. It really works that way. It really does. There's something in the way that we process information when we reproduce it that compels us to be able to find that file drawer in our brains more easily when we need to, okay? I know some of the stuff sounds like real rudimentary stuff. Believe me, it needs to be said, okay? Now, anything else on this, just the general mechanics of the essays and the assignments?
I have one.
Yeah.
So I just want to get into my head for clarification so I don't get confused. So throughout this term, we're going to do technically 4 big writing assignments.
No, you're going to do 2.
Yeah, 2 big writing assignments. And then if you don't do a writing assignment, you do a presentation
Right.
for 2 times.
Yeah.
Can we pick which ones like we want to do? Or is it
Well,
just that?
You can, to the extent that, well, you'll see how this works in a minute. In other words, it's kind of got to be first come, first served. So, you normally need to kind of be ready with something. Like, for example, if this were next week and we hadn't yet chosen anything, say like we'd already had Tuesday to meet as a class, and you'd had a chance to look at the syllabus, you would need to know first thing at the beginning of this class, I want to do this. And you'd say, hey, if no one else has taken it, I want to do the discussion. Let me just go there. Sorry. I want to do the discussion on women reading, writing, and reshaping the sexual culture of Victorian America. If you're the first person in line to do that, I make a note. Okay. And then someone else can say, oh, I want to do that too. Okay. That closes that auction.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Crystal
how we'll
clear.
we're going to do it in a minute. So you'll see how it works.
Okay. Only for this week, right?
Well, not so much for this week, for this module.
Oh, for this module.
The
Okay.
modules are 2 to 3 weeks. This one's 2 weeks, and it's a strange one because we do only, and I honestly don't know why all these classes were scheduled to meet only once a week, but they were, and I had nothing to do with that. By the way, apropos that, just so you know, I've already set aside in my scheduling both the Tuesday and the Thursday from 1:30 to 3:20 as originally I'd planned on that to be class time, and then I looked and I thought, oh wow, that's weird, it's only scheduled for Thursday. In fact, all of these classes are only scheduled 1 day a week. Fine, I'm still available. So if you have questions or anything, in addition to the regular noon to 1 office hour that I have Monday through Friday, I'm also available, unless obviously some situation comes up, there's some sort of a meeting or something and I have to go there, which is going to be rare. I'm still available on Tuesdays between 1:30 and 3:20.
Okay, cool.
Just consider that to be additional office hour.
Okay.
And again, I'm also available sort of off the clock if that's the only time some of you work or have other demands upon your time. We'll work out a convenient time. That's fine. But I try to be pretty available through the week. I've had to kind of shut it down on the weekends. I mean, I was in last spring term and in fall term, I was really available over the weekends. And what I found was that I was pretty much working every day. And I kind of started to run out of gas because I also have to go down sometimes and help take care of my dad and stuff like that. And again, that's my problem. That's a personal issue, but it's a demand upon my time. All right. So I'll try to be as available as you need me to be on that. That should not be a problem. Okay. Now let's look real quickly at the concepts we're dealing with. And I'm taking this right from the Moodle page. So you don't worry about making notes. Just if you want to, you can, but all of this is right off the Moodle site. Underneath the links for the Zoom meetings, you'll see there's 4 lines, and one says early, quote, new media, photography, telegraphy, and the news. Okay. The main theme of this class is that what we always harp on about as the new shiny object in the room that we call new media is nothing new. That people were responding to and effusing over and writing with dread about their concerns about new media going back 150 years, right? When, you can go all the way back to movable type printing introduced in the West in the 16th century, the Gutenberg Bible, the idea of democratizing literacy and stuff like that. On the one hand, those things were celebrated as these tremendous accomplishments of civilization. They were also dreaded as encroachments of the people or democratizing information that should be controlled hierarchically, historically by the church, right? So this notion of new media as a social phenomenon, as a political phenomenon, it's nothing new, okay? And I know a lot of you think of yourselves as sort of the new media generation. What I hope you will see from this class is, no, you're not, okay? There are things that characterize your generation in terms of media technology, the media heuristics, the whole notion of, the alleged democratization of media and stuff like that. But you're not unique. You're peculiar to your time, but you're not unique, okay? Once you get over that, all of a sudden the throw weight of history makes a lot more sense, okay? And the notion of a connection between media of communication and the nature of that communication and its political substance across generations and across eras makes a lot more sense. That's the objective of the class. We're almost exclusively focused on the United States simply because that was my job at the time this class was written. So the first thing, this notion of new media, okay? The telegraph was a revolutionary new medium at the time that it came out, okay? Photography was a revolutionary and many people thought subversive new medium at the time it came out let's say by 1830, okay? The idea of capturing a permanent recorded image of an environment, of an individual, became sort of shockingly revolutionary in its time, right? And you can look into this as much as you want, and you'll find a lot of Western and Eastern Europeans involved in this initially. Most of you have heard terms like daguerreotype and things like that. These are specific photographic processes. What we do know is that by the time of the American Civil War, photography was part of the visual narrative of the United States. Okay, it was very much an important part of that. Portraiture and also battlefield photography, things like this. We saw in photographic images things we'd never seen in anything other than imperfect sketches and things like that. Well, you can see that creates a sense of connection to an event. You have a visual reference to something you did not personally experience. Okay, this changes the way that we process information. And it also affects the values of our culture in various ways. Telegraphy, the same thing. The importance of the illusion, at least, of immediacy. Okay, that instead of having to wait, 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months to hear about something, we might get it in 6 minutes. Okay, that changes everything. That was a revolutionary technological breakthrough in communication at the time, that every bit as transcendent as anything having to do with the internet. Every bit, if not more so, because we'd never seen anything like it before, okay? Yellow journalism. Does anybody know, some of you may be communications majors, what's yellow journalism? Dylan, did you have your hand up? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the term before. I'm not a communications major, so feel free to steamroll me if I'm wrong, but isn't it kind of like news that is presented as being based in research and factual, when in reality it's really not? There's not actual research going into it. It's kind of like what we would maybe call like gossip rags today. It's just not really of substance.
That can be yellow journalism, but one of the common misconceptions about the notion of yellow journalism is that it's not factually correct. Okay, one of the things we have to remember about all journalism is that none of it is completely factually correct. All right, all of it at some point involves editorial decisions about what am I going to emphasize and how am I going to emphasize it and things like that. Sometimes yellow journalism is just, fake news sometimes. But also it's the idea that a lot of yellow journalism was sensationalist journalism. That is, it was the stuff that would get the great unwashed to pay their penny and grab a newspaper, all right, and read it. And the advertisers supporting that newspaper thought, put anything on the front page of that rag you want, as long as it gets them to pick up that paper and take it away with them, because eventually they're going to see the advertisements. And once that was established as the business model for newspapers, you saw a lot of things happen. One, some newspapers moved all of their opinion inside the fold, inside the paper. That's when we first had editorial sections, and that notion of what's called an op-ed, or opposite the editorial. Those were moved inside. Prior to that, virtually every American newspaper was explicitly partisan, right on the front page. And that's why a lot of them will have, the so-and-so Democrat or the so-and-so whatever that indicates, oh, this is clearly a partisan newspaper of this faction, okay? And so that was one of the things that happened when you had ad-supported rather than subscription-supported newspapers, okay? You reduce the cost of admission because advertising is the main revenue source. Suddenly more people buy your newspaper. This becomes relevant as literacy spreads in the United States. We're talking about roughly 1850, okay? The other thing is that since we're now catering to a much broader audience who might only be sort of semi-literate, first of all, we're going to try to give them more to look at instead of read. So we're going to give them exciting things to look at. We're going to give them fires because everyone's fascinated by fire, right? When Coney Island was initially constructed, it was kind of the yellow journalism of fun for the great working class, right? One of the most popular attractions at Coney Island was a house on fire that they would set on fire, right, using gas and lighting that, so people could come and watch people put out a house on fire. And that was a big draw. Well, people who were doing these more populist newspapers were thinking, I know what's going to move a lot of units. Above the fold, right, because you're folding the paper in half and setting it in a stack, let's have a big picture of a fire. Well, that's right, we can do that because we have photography. Okay, and there's going to be a fire and smoke, and everyone's going to stop and see that and think, yeah, give me one of those. Here's my penny, right? Another thing that people knew, that editors knew, people were fascinated by, was kind of lurid crime. So you had a lot of scandal, a lot of like sex crimes, scandals involving the upper class, anything that looked sort of lurid and sordid and everything else. Now, again, these things may very well have been true. Many of them may not have been. That wasn't really the point. Some of it was what Dylan suggested. It was just fabrication. Some of it was just, no, it's true, but how important is it? Who cares? It's fun to read. So again, a lot of you will look at contemporary media and say, well, a lot of it is just, remember some of you from maybe communication studies will know, there was a phenomenon that really began by about 1990, and it was called infotainment. The idea that, well, we've merged entertainment and information in a way we've never before seen. That's nonsense. Newspapers were doing that in the middle of the 19th century. They were exploiting the new visual technology of photography. They were exploiting the democratization of readership by giving them yellow journalism, sensationalist, lurid, funky, kind of, wow, did you hear about? Yeah, I did. Wow, isn't that amazing? And let's see if they follow it up in tomorrow's news. Oh, look, there's somebody killed 13 people with a hatchet. Give me 3 of those, So that's kind of the importance of yellow journalism. Alongside that was a critical journalism, sometimes referred to as muckraking. Okay, they're often conflated. They shouldn't be. The difference is that yellow journalism was sensationalist. It was just there to move units and get people to buy papers, right? Muckraking was journalism that was advocating social reform. It identified specifically political corruption, often in big cities. Most of the muckraking journalism occurred in large metropolitan areas because every one of those metropolitan areas was wildly corrupt. You could say, if you look at New York City, right, circa 1850, right, all the boroughs of Manhattan are controlled by gangs, usually Irish gangs. The Tammany Hall machine was reinforced by gangs, violent, ethnically Irish gangs. Tammany Hall was an ethnically Irish democratic political machine. So when you look at something like you saw yesterday, and you think the country's never seen anything like that before, go back and look at the anti-abolitionist riots of the 1830s. Look at the draft riots of 1860, all right? Those are people burning down parts of New York City, okay? We've seen this before. Nothing's new, I'm telling you. But the interesting thing about that is it took tremendous courage for newspaper editors and publishers to take on these political machines. They could be killed. They could have their businesses burned to the ground. They could be destroyed publicly and politically and financially, okay? So it's really different from the kind of sensationalist, lurid, hey, that person has no clothes on, I'll buy 3 of those, I mean, it was a different kind of thing. Again, necessitated by the inherent relentless corruption of these large metropolitan areas, all right? So that's why I have both yellow journalism and the muckrakers. And then this notion of magazines, popular culture, and the middling sort, okay? In the middling sort, we have the rise of what was called American middlebrow culture. This really begins in the 19th century with the expansion of opportunities for education and professional training and the emergence of an authentic, solid American middle class, okay, which really begins to grow rapidly in the last, let's say, 50 years of the 19th century. We see the American middle class explode faster than anywhere else in the world, okay? Well, there needed to be things that would satisfy both the needs and the desires of that expanding middle class. One of the ways that people used media to respond to that was in these targeted magazines. In other words, it wasn't like a general readership forum like a newspaper. Magazines are specific, thematically focused subject matter, right? Where you begin the first use of niche marketing, which now is widespread and common. And by the way, one of the primary motivators of polarization in this country is niching the media. Well, this didn't begin with Donald Trump, and it didn't begin with Fox News. Okay, it began with magazines. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to suggest. All right, so far, questions or concerns or comments? That's normally what I'll do. I'll give you like, okay, let me give you the benediction. Let me give you the overview. Keep those concepts in mind when you go to the readings, okay? And then when we do the presentations next week, I shouldn't have to do a lot of, initially anyway, I shouldn't have to do a lot of talking. I should be able to listen and take notes on the things that you have to say, okay? If things are working well. If we have a bad day, we have a bad day. I mean, we'll do the best we can, okay? Now, if there are no other questions, then we get on to deciding who wants to present next Thursday, and that would be the first of two for you. At least you're getting one out of the way. Some of you might just think, no, I've got a ton of stuff to do next week. That's a bad week for me to have to do that. I don't want to do it. I'm uncomfortable presenting. Let me think about it. You know, as long as you do two, I don't really care. So who wants to do telegraphy and yellow journalism in the Spanish-American War? Okay, so Liam. Who else? You got to make noise because I see everybody twitching a little bit.
I'll do it.
Okay. All right, who wants to do women reading, writing, and reshaping the sexual culture of Victorian America? This one involves a lot of things. What I'm trying to do there is get something that shows, wow, there were these exciting things going on in culture, especially among that emerging, more affluent middle class. There was feminism, there was sexuality, and they were using things like magazines. So I see, I spelled your name wrong. Croft, and who else? Do you want to do that by yourself? You can if you want to, if nobody else is ready. Going, gone. Okay, so that's two. All right. What about the rhetoric of temperance in the Anglo-African magazine? Again, this is an example of how magazines were used for a targeted demographic, primarily African-American men, over the issue of temperance. Now, I had no idea until I taught this class last time that most of you had no idea what temperance was. And temperance was the movement to eliminate alcohol, the legal consumption of alcohol.
Was there a second person on the Victorian one?
No, I did it going, gone, and nobody was interested. Did you?
Can I change to that? Can I change to that one?
Well, you're already down.
Can I?
No, you can't.
Okay. Alrighty.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Does anybody else want to do telegraphy, yellow journalism, in the Spanish-American War? You've had a chance to think about it.
I'll do that one.
All right, so then, all right, you just saved. Okay, hold on, just let me fix that. And let's see, Nolan, was that you?
Correct.
Okay, let me do this. Okay. Now, what about again? Rhetoric of Temperance in the Anglo-African magazine. This was a magazine that was again targeted to middle class, an emerging Black middle class. Or even an emerging Black working class that was literate, that had some education, primarily situated in and around places like Chicago, okay, who had left the South, many of them, And it was sort of like, hey, look, we've got to get our shit together. We got to control this drinking situation. And they were trying to use this magazine in part to do that. Any interest
I'll
there?
take it.
Jared?
Yep.
Anybody else, or you gonna leave
I'll
Jared?
take it. The temperance, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, youth periodicals, patriotism, and the textual mechanics of civic mobilization, which is actually a little more interesting than the title might suggest.
I'd
Okay,
really like to do that
Brett,
one.
did I see you raising your hand on that? I think you were first.
Yes, yes, you did.
Okay. And who else? I'm sorry. Who else wanted?
I would like to do that one.
All right. And now this last one is a strange one, but if I leave it in there because there's something about it that I'd never really thought about. And it's called From Travel to Tourism. And I don't want to get into it too much because I don't want to step on whoever presents this, but it's how the emergence of a certain kind of technology applied in a certain way changes notions about travel and what it really means to travel. And the development of the concept of tourism is actually in part driven by media technology. So it's kind of a strange one. And because of that, I'm going to be pretty forgiving on that particular presentation. It's interesting, but you might find it initially a little bit difficult to go, what are they really saying here? It's a challenge. Okay.
I'll take that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Krista, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I'll volunteer for that
I
one.
think you were first. All right. Well, now you see, that's how we do that. Now the rest of you, you'll have plenty of opportunities with other readings to do a presentation. If you forget, obviously you can either email me, or if you really have stamina, you can play the recording I'm going to post, in about 20 minutes when it's processed, and you can hear again, what your reading is supposed to be. But let me go over these. So we got Nolan Fincher, Monica Benton doing telegraphy, yellow journalism, blah, blah, blah. Renee Croft, Liam Henney doing women reading, writing, reshaping the sexual culture of Victorian America. Jared Hawkins, Quinn Barby doing rhetoric of temperance. Brett Wallen, Julian Engen doing youth periodicals and patriotism and all that happy stuff. Valeria Stefanakis and Krista Beal doing From Travel to Tourism. Okay? So if you forget which one you're supposed to do, and you wake up tomorrow and you have no recall of this moment, then just shoot me an email, say, hey, what was the one I was supposed to read? I can't remember. And I'll help you with that. I would recommend that if you haven't done so already, please take a look at the Moodle site, look at the way it's arranged. And the syllabus is there, but you could pretty much get the outline of the class from the Moodle site. I wouldn't worry too much about the syllabus itself unless you are someone who is a pathological syllabus reader, in which case you will be bored out of your skull. But I can't stop you from doing that because it's a free country, except that of course it's not. All right, anything else? All right, are you getting the idea of where we're going here? In other words, no such thing as new media, just innovations in technology. But we got to get off this idea that everything else is old and this is new.
I have one more thing. Can I
Yeah,
have
sure.
my partner's name again so I could get a hold of him?
Yeah, Jared
Work with him?
Hawkins. Jared Hawkins.
Jared Hawkins.
What I'm going to do, what I'll do, I think the easiest thing to do might be to post a little label on here with the names and the readings, or maybe I might put the names underneath the readings. So how do you want me to do this? Is it something you're liable to forget?
I'm writing it down
Okay.
just so I could have it on my desk so I don't forget.
Okay. Now there's another thing that I've sometimes done that we can decide as a group whether or not we want to do. There's a breakout room function in Zoom. And if we needed to do that, we could take 5 minutes right at the beginning of class. I can set up a breakout room for the people assigned to each of the readings. And then, once everybody's shown up and we're ready to go, I can dump the presenters into a breakout room. The rest of us can talk about general stuff, and you can take 5 and get a beer. And then, except you can't drink beer on camera because then I get in trouble, but I don't know, who cares? Anyway, So you can meet with whoever's in your group. Does that make sense? I'm going to let you decide between now and next Thursday whether or not you want to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just getting a sense, so like maybe like earlier in the week we could just meet and just work on it and then that stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I just wanted the name, so I wasn't
Okay.
just yeah. Thanks.
Sure. Does anybody else need to know that, who you're working with, so that you, in case you want to meet earlier? Okay, don't worry about it then.
I just have another question.
Yeah.
So if we're not presenting, so you just want us to take notes on each of the different like topics in module 1, right? And then just
Each of the readings.
yeah, each of the
Yeah,
readings, and then
right.
just create our paper taking 2 of them.
Right.
All right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so when you do the presentation, do you also take notes of each one, or do you
Yes,
just?
when you do the presentation, you still take notes on every reading. You don't have to do the larger written work though.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Again, if we'll revise this until we all sort of know the drill. As I say, it makes sense to do it. It sometimes sounds goofy when you try to explain it. Okay, but what I'm trying to do is allow you to focus on your written work, and then maybe have a couple of weeks or so where you don't have to worry about that, and you can just look through the things and make your notes and not have to worry about, crap, I got to turn in a written assignment at the end of this. I'm American. I don't want to write, you know? I mean, I'm patriot, man. We don't write. Right? Can I get a witness? Yeah, Julian, did you have your hand up?
This is kind of a numbers question, but I'm wondering if we have enough people in the class to do 2 people on each presentation.
No,
each
we don't
week.
have to have 2. We might find that some of them, there's only one who wants to do it. And again, if 2 people do presentations and everyone's done 2, and there are readings that are just sort of hanging out there, we can either decide as a group, okay, never mind, we won't do that one, or I'll do it. It doesn't matter, you know. It's a rough idea, because some of these, like when you scroll down there, if you look at like the second module has, let's see, 3, 6, 7 readings. The third module has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but some of them go together. Like there's, for example, and this is by module 3, we'll know this, right? There's 3 assigned readings on gonzo journalism. There's one about gonzo journalism, and then 2 actual pieces by Hunter Thompson. All right. One person might do the article on gonzo. Somebody else might come along and say, hey, let me do the 2 readings that on Hunter Thompson. One of them, the one on Richard Nixon, is a couple of pages long. The other one is it's longer. But we can worry about that. There's one on beatnik stereotypes and consumer culture, largely focusing on Mad Magazine. There are also some excerpts from William S. Burroughs. Okay. If you don't understand Burroughs, you might not want to take those on. Those are provocative materials. He was a formidable writer who dealt with things that make that same middling sort in America extremely uncomfortable in the 1950s. Okay. I don't want anybody presenting on anything where they're not comfortable. Okay. So it might just be that, okay, I'll do William Burroughs. Don't worry about that. If you're freaked out or something, it's fine. It's just an example. I'm not saying that any of you would be, but and we might just have some readings where they're just not interesting enough that any of you really want to do them. And then I make a note of that, and I rethink whether or not I want to continue to. I've eliminated some readings from the very first time I wrote this class because they were interesting, but no one really wanted to do them. They didn't engage the students, and if they don't, then they're not serving their purpose. So, don't worry about it. If no one wants to do something, as long as everybody does their 2 presentations, I'm happy. Anything else?
So are we going to be doing the breakout groups before each presentation, or should we be talking to, like, are we presenting together? That's my other question. Like, are we working together to do the presentation?
Well,
We have another person.
you'll both be presenting sort of simultaneously or back to back, but you're not required to work together. It's up to you to decide whether or not you need to coordinate. I mean, I want to leave a little bit of leeway for people to decide, kind of choose your adventure. I want you to be able to do it in a way that works best for you. That may be that, I don't want to be bothered by this. I don't know this other person. I don't feel comfortable talking with them, that's fine. You know, some people are real shy or whatever and don't want to work with somebody. I'm not going to push that. I mean, for some people, just talking for 3 minutes in class can create anxiety. It's unfortunate, but it's true. I'm trying to make that as low impact as possible, but also to encourage you to do it because it's good for you to learn how to do that. It will surprise some of you to know that when I first, now this is like when I was like maybe 20 and I first started a gig, I had paralyzing stage fright, you know, and it was, part of it was this notion of imposter syndrome because I was a performing musician who'd never studied, right? And so I was going out there without a net. And I would convince myself 5 minutes before a show with 1,000 people sitting out there, I can't play this instrument, you know? So I understand that anxiety. I get that. But I was compelled to get past it because I was involved in shows where people were depending on me. Hey, Bill, you got to go out there and play, man. Oh, well, all right. And first thing would happen, first 2 notes I'd play, all of a sudden I was good. And that's usually what happens when people have concerns about doing some sort of presentation in class. Just get it out of your system and you'll do fine. Yeah, Julie, did you get your hand up? Yeah.
I also wanted to ask for people who have not taken a class with you before what your presentation expectation is, because I think I remember from last class I took with you that you don't like PowerPoints and stuff.
No, I don't, especially in this environment, it's really cumbersome to do screen sharing and stuff like that. But also, my experience with PowerPoints and things like that is, unless you're like a really creepy real estate salesperson or something like that, I don't think most people really pay attention to them very much. Either that or they become distracted by that and they don't really listen to what you're saying. I really think it's more important that we cultivate that skill of being able to engage a room of people, even virtually, and interest them in something that we think of as important. I think that's a valuable skill for you personally, as well as professionally. You know, to have that ability to just sit down and say something interesting to people. You know, one of the things I used to tell my sons when they were first getting interested in, you know, like dating and stuff was be interesting. You know, don't talk about things you want to talk about. Be interesting. And this is partly an exercise in being interesting. But the main thing to think about, Julian, and everybody really is, what's the thing that's most worth learning about this particular piece? If I were to strip this down to one main idea, or maybe there are two, right? What would they be? What would the main things be without which this piece just has no value? Because you're going to find that a lot of times writers, you take forever to get to the point. But sooner or later, there is a point. The challenge is for you to be able to identify that and then explain it to us in a way that we can see it too. And that shouldn't take more than a few minutes. And I mean, really like a few, like 2 or 3 minutes. Some of you who are not used to speaking extemporaneously will find that speaking for 2 minutes feels like speaking for half an hour. Okay, that's a lot of space. 2 minutes is a lot of space. All right, so I understand. Any other questions on that?
I have a quick question, and I was just wondering, you said earlier that we don't necessarily need to have 2 people for each topic if we're presenting.
Right.
So that's okay, like if we do 2 presentations and like it ends up both being by ourselves?
Absolutely.
Okay, I was just wondering about that.
Sure, there are more than enough readings here for a few of you to just work independently. Some people really prefer to work independently. And as you get into these pieces, and I would probably think about glancing ahead to the next module as soon as you think you have a handle on things. Get an idea of, well, which ones, some of these are 3 pages, some of them are 13 pages. Those might be the ones where you want to have 2 people. Okay, so I'm gonna let you do a little reconnaissance of your own before you make that decision. But absolutely, if you do 2 presentations and both of them are just you by yourself, but they're covering readings that are relevant to the class, I don't have any problem with that at all. Okay, now I'm going to say one more thing, but I really want you to think hard before you invoke this. Sometimes there will be a situation where a student really finds that presenting in front of the class is just, feels at least as though it's insupportable and it just terrifies you. Okay, I don't have any interest at all in putting you through an agonizing experience. So what I would suggest is that if you're concerned about that, what I would recommend that you do is make an appointment with me to meet via Zoom, and let's see if we can talk you through what your presentation would be. Sometimes if you do that and do like a dry run in front of just one person, then it's like, okay, that's not so bad. Now I feel like I can do it. But I really want you to try. But I don't want anyone to do anything that is just shatteringly anxiety inducing. There's no point to that, because you're going to be so frightened or so anxious, you're not going to learn anything. You know, it's rare, but it happens. And I think we need to respect that, because that's not something we can control. I mean, I have an irrational fear of rats. I really do. They terrify me. I've tried several times to like deal with it. Like I've known people who are in the sciences who have rats and they bring them home and I'm like, give me that rat, man. I'm going to deal with this rat. And I could kind of do it, but it's like, really, it's a phobia. It's irrational. Okay. And so I understand. I always think about that. It's like, Bill, would you want to hold a rat? No, that's the way this person feels when he or she has to present in class. It's like you holding a rat. So I don't want anybody holding a rat. Okay. But before you bail, just let's talk about it. And maybe we can figure out a way where you can actually unpack that thing enough that you can present it. Because I guarantee you, if you do it once, the next time's going to be a lot easier. Okay. But I'm not going to force you to do anything that really, really makes you feel uncomfortable. We can figure out an alternative assignment. And you know what? No one's keeping score on you and no one's going to care. But I think it's important that you try. But I just want to reassure you before we get any farther in the class, if you've been thinking about that, like, man, I hate it, really frightens me, talk to me. Just send me an email. We'll set up a point. We'll talk about it. We'll see if we can cope with it. And if we really find that we agree mutually that you can't, I'll give you an alternative assignment. Okay? I don't want anyone feeling that. I don't mind you feeling challenged. I don't like the idea of making you feel uncomfortable. I really don't. I think we've got enough stress on us right now as it is. I don't think there's any reason I should add to that. Does that make sense? Okay, and I don't think I'm babying you either. It's a very real fear for some people, and I think we have to respect it. I really do. Okay? Anything else? All right, so what I would like you to do sooner rather than later, and certainly by the time we meet next week, I should begin to look on the Moodle page and begin to see entries under your notes. Okay? That link is open. Again, let me scroll back up. If you go to module 1, you will see, oh, by the way, there's also, I don't know if you need to worry about it. This was done primarily for when I teach this class in the summer and it's completely online. There are at least really brief audio files where I summarize some of the readings. And what I try to do is show you, here's how I would connect these together. Here's how thematically I can integrate these together. The purpose of that is when you get ready to do your written summary, if you listen to that, you think, okay, Bill's showing me one way that some of these readings fit together. Maybe I can be informed by that. It's just another way. It's just another way I'm trying to kind of give you something else to look at when we're not in class. Okay. But again, you will see a link right below the reading says Module 1 reading notes. Okay. When I click on that, I can see who submitted notes and I can start looking at that. Because if I'm looking there and I see where maybe, man, you're making a note here that I think you've missed a point, I might drop a lug in there and say, you know what, you might want to take a look at this again. Either that or I'll know to bring it up in class. All right. I think we're done for the day. Does it seem like we are? All right, then. Relatively quick and painless. Come on now. I'll see you then. I guess I will see you all next Thursday. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.